creative friends. My name is Joey Balistreri. Welcome to my work table. Today what I'm working on is a pendant necklace, and it is going to be a mixed media design. I actually was inspired by an actress that I saw in an article I was reading, and the stylist was talking about the fact that she was wearing a pendant necklace, and I thought that I would do one in my favorite metals, which are gold and copper. I love mixing them, and because we're in the fall and going into the winter season, I'm taking my favorite colors that I love and doing deeper, richer shades that seem more fitting for the seasons coming up. So I have these rich purples and berries here, and golds and some copper. Off to the side here, I have these beautiful 6/0 seed beads, which will be in my stringing part, and I have these check glass gold seed beads in two sizes, the 11/0 and the 8/0, and I need to get more 8/0. That's literally all that I have, so I'll probably be stretching those out in my stringing. And off to the side, I also have some check glass O beads. It's a type of seed bead. This is a purple iris gold mix. They're a 3.8 by 1 millimeter size, so they're pretty small, but I just love them. I love them stacked. It's just a great spacer, and I'm going to show you a couple of options for the stringing. I think that I'm going to be using this Brazilian waxed cord with this gold metallic thread in it, but you could also use the SoftFlex 49 strand, which is what I'm going to use to start off with on my pendant. So to begin, I'm going to create the pendant so that I can see what it's going to look like and then begin my stringing design. So this is my favorite. This is the copper color. It's the medium 49 strand all-purpose. And this is just wonderful. It's so flexible and malleable, but even this color, it just blends in whether you're using golds or coppers or neutral colors. It's very neutral. And if it shows in your design, it becomes part of the design because it's so pretty, but then you can also string seed beads on it. So I just have a little piece of that right here. And I'm going to start with one of these kind of cylindrical beads, and I do not want a loop on the top of this, so I'm going to start by putting this bead in the middle here. I put some things out here to show you. Let me just move them out of the way. I have some SoftFlex #2 crimp tubes here in my dish. This is how they come when you order them, and I have a magnetic copper clasp, which I may not even use. I may do this an over the head necklace, but I just want to make some space here. And then, you know, I showed you the seed beads. So back to the pendant. I'm sorry, I digress. I forgot to show you everything that I was going to be using. So I'm going to start with one of those beads, and then I am going to, in fact, let me just dump some of these out. It's easier to pick up seed beads from the mat than it is from a little bowl. So let's just get some of them out here. And I'm going to string on 3 on each side, and I may even do more. Start with 3 and see what it looks like. See where it, when I connect my next bead, if I like the spacing. So let me just get 2, 3. Okay, and then I'm going to take my second bead, and I'm going to run this end of my SoftFlex through from this side and this end through this side, and I'm going to pull, and then I'll have a look and see if I've strung on enough seed beads to make that little bridge if I like it, and I do. That's really, really pretty. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, 3 more seed beads on each side, and I am using the 8/0s. I'm going to save the 6/0 quantity in this same color for my stringing. And I will say here that I have opted for 3 of these oblong beads, but if you wanted this pendant to be longer and more dramatic, you could definitely do more. I do like to work in odd numbers, so I would, if I were going to do more, I would go up to 5 probably, but I'm going to do that same thing, just crisscross. And the reason I opted for 3 is because I want to add in these other elements that you see here on my mat. I want this pendant to be multimedia and, you know, mixed media, I meant to say. and I want it to kind of have the drama. It's going to shift from, this is going to want to curl up if you see me kind of struggling with it. That's pretty typical until I get it crimped and get everything hanging. But that's the beginning of my pendant. Let me hold it up to the camera. That's the beginning of the pendant. And then my plan is to make a seed bead loop here and crimp it, and then I'm going to use some SoftFlex wire. I have some 20 gauge SoftFlex craft wire. I love this. It's so nice to work with, and it has an anti-tarnish coating, and I'm going to wire this little flower, and that's going to hang from here. And then the on the other part of the flower, I'm going to hang this little copper drop. I cannot remember where I got this, and it's a designer too. I don't know if it's Nun Design. I really can't remember because I've had it in my stash for a while, but I just love the way that like drops down from this little ladder that I'm creating. So now I'm just going to string on seed beads in and make a loop here. So it's going to be a pretty small, but I don't want it to look the same as my side loop. So let's see. Let me start with 5 on each strand and see what that gives me. I think I'm going to do 7. I think I'm going to make it a little bit more dramatic. Okay, now I just need to tighten everything down. And I'm going to take one of those number 2 crimp tubes. These come in copper as well, but I'm mixing gold and copper in this piece, and I just grabbed the gold ones. I have both, but so that's going to be essentially the same thing. The same thing that I did with the cylinder bead. I'm going to thread the crimp tube on, and then I'm going to thread this in the opposite direction. I can't talk and thread at the same time, apparently. It's a day. And then I'm just going to pull both ends, and I don't have to crimp if I'm not happy with like the size of my loops. This just gives me a chance to look at everything, because this, you know, this is my pendant. Get this in the center, try to pull them together. There we go. There we go. So this gives you a chance to check all your spacing and see if you like it. Let's see. I'm just going to take a second and make sure that I have my spacing right, and just have a look at what I've chosen here as far as the numbers of seed beads. Just be a second. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I just played with it, and the nice thing about the SoftFlex wire is I was just kind of bending it. It will kind of take this shape, and you know, it's already starting to lay flat, and this has a little bit of weight to it, so when this is hanging and then my necklace is attached, it's going to look really nice. It's just a really pretty like pendant drop. So I am going to use my magical crimping plier. So I'm just going to get this crimp tube centered in the single divot in this plier. Make sure it's in the center. Close down, and you can see that all 4 corners, well, you've made 4 corners on a tube, and then I'm going to place that back in the opposite direction, just making sure I feel that it's in the center, and close it in that direction, and then maintain the position in the tool and just open and close as I go around. Whoops, it slipped out. Make sure it's in the, you will mangle your crimp tube if you clamp down on it and it's not in that divot, you know, squarely in the center. So if you're having trouble with this plier, sometimes that's it, is that you're going too fast and it's not really in the center of that divot. That's overkill. I went around and around so many times. But that essentially is done, and I'm going to come and trim my little tails as close as possible. And on a length like this, I will not throw this away. I have the coolest design making circles with about that much. You can use your scraps of your SoftFlex. I have a great earring video where I've used little scraps like this to make some hoop earrings, and it's really fun and really easy. So essentially that's done. Let me take my little piece of craft wire, my SoftFlex craft wire, and I am going to use my one-step looper. And let's see, for this attachment, it can be a small loop like the 1.5 millimeter, and I'm just going to place the wire in there and let it make that little fresh clean cut, and warm and straighten the wire while it's still in the tool. I'm pulling it down so that my loop is centered on the wire, and my loop is in there. And then I'm going to thread on this bead, and let's see, do I want to add something to this? I think I'm going to add some of the little elements that will go into my stringing just so they appear down in my pendant. So let me put some of these. I'll definitely be using these, and maybe even these little O beads. I love O beads. Okay, and let's see what we can do here. Let me put a gold and a purple. I'm just going to play for a second with a little pattern, a little stack. That would be my top. I am going to have to put a bigger loop because if you see the thickness of my copper pendant, I am going to need a bigger loop on the bottom of this. So let's see. Maybe I want to reverse that. Let me get also straighten the end of my wire, because sometimes on certain beads, if there's even the slightest bend in your wire, it fights you going through the hole. And put one of these for the bottom of the flower, just to add a little something. Okay, so this is going to attach to, I'm just looking at the orientation of my loop. So this loop is going perpendicular to my mat because it's going to attach right here. So my loop that's going through here needs to be going horizontally to my mat. So I'm going to turn it this way. My loop is, flat this way, and I am going to switch to my largest one-step looper. This is the 3 millimeter. And if you get your loop in the wrong direction, it's totally okay, not a big deal. You can, with 2 pairs of pliers, redirect it. Like sometimes, see, my bead has just flipped. So I need this loop to be going totally in the opposite direction. And the one-step looper always turns the loops upward. So no matter what my flower bead is doing, I can see I'm going in the right direction. And I'm just going to close it slowly. I can see that I'm not damaging any of my beads. Let it make that fresh cut for me. And I'm not closing the tool all the way because I want to pull this down, and that centers my loop on this wire. And also I can feel, I still haven't closed it all the way, I can feel that my seed bead is a little bit too close to the jaw of the plier, so that's okay. I'm in control. I can finish closing with my pliers, and I didn't break any of my beads. But in fact, I don't even need to close this all the way yet because I'm going to open it anyway too. That's the whole point of a simple loop. I was going to open it anyway to add my pendant. Let me switch hands here so I can close this. Just not happy with that closure. There we go. And I like to open and close my pliers with a little bit of force just to work harden. And let me get to this loop and open this one. And I'm going to attach it to the bottom of my pendant right where my crimp bead is. And close that really well. Oh, that is so pretty. I love that little pendant. That is gorgeous. Okay, so my pendant is done. And from here, you could take another piece of the SoftFlex and run it through here and do a bead stringing pattern on that. But I think I'm going to play with mixing all this media with my Brazilian waxed cord. This is the 0.5 millimeter. This is just a test strand. I want to make sure that 2 strands actually go through. It feels like they will. Let me go on this end of my test strand and just see. It feels like they will. I kind of like the boho vibe of mixing all the different media in this necklace. Let's see. I think it's just getting caught up on my SoftFlex wire because there is space. Yes, there is space. So that's my plan, is to switch to this Brazilian waxed cord and do a knotted design using these check glass rondelles, a couple more of the cylinder beads that are in my pendant, these 6/0 seed beads in these colors and these O beads. And when I get started stringing, I may even go shopping in my stash for some more beads. But what I'm gonna do is I've already cut this, and I just dropped my 1-step looper, but this is a ridiculously long length of the Brazilian waxed cord, and it is doubled in half. I cannot give you the measurement because when I took this off the spool, this is what my spool looks like. It's the Lin Hasita Brazilian wax cord in the 0.5 millimeter, and this is just from my stash. I can link one supplier in the description box of this video for it, but you can really use any Brazilian waxed cord, and honestly even polyester cord. Like if you're in America, Michael's craft stores have a little card of Brazilian wax cord, and I use that sometimes too. Just you know what color you have to look for the color you want. So I want 2 strands on each side of my necklace, and as I said, I haven't decided yet if I'm even going to put a clasp on this piece. So I'm gonna just come to the middle, and I started to say when I got sidetracked, I didn't really measure this. I never really know how many knots I intend to do when I start a design, and I also was not sure if I was even going to put a clasp, and I do love long necklaces, so I may just get it to the length I want and just tie a knot and have this like pop over my head. So I'm just going to pull out of the camera for a second here, just to get this pendant in the center of my length of cord. About in the center. And I am going to just have to decide how I want to start, if I want to draw this together and do a knot right here and then separate it, or do a bead and then a knot. And I kind of like that idea. Let me cut this open. Doing a bead and then a knot above the bead and then separating the cords is going to add to the drama of the pendant. So let's see. I actually was not sure. I'm not sure if 4 strands will even go through this these beads. I might not be able to do that with these particular beads. In fact, I can look at the hole and tell you that it won't. Let's see if 4 strands will go through, and do I want one sideways? Let me see if they'll go, 4 strands will fit through my cylinder beads. Looks like they will. So I could do a cylinder. That's kind of cool. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Decision made. I'm going to pull this together right here and just do an overhand knot. And you do not need a tool for a knotting technique, but I use one. I love my old knotting tweezer. It looks like this. It's a precision tip tweezer, and it just really helps me to control where my knots land. So once you make your overhand knot, you reach inside the loop and get a hold of your cord wherever you want that knot to be. So I'm going to center this like right about there, and when I pull, that knot is going to land right where the tip of those tweezers are, and then I can just pull them out and lock my knot into place. And so I had total control over where my knot lands on the piece. So now let's see if 4 strands will go through any of my spacer beads. I don't think they will go through these O beads. I would be shocked. You never know until you try, though. Nope. 2 is taking up space. So I am going to bring in, this is what happens to me when I start. Let me just back away from the camera really quickly. I have this little set of Tibetan spacers, and pretty much all of them have large holes. And let's see how this one fits. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then one of these on each side. And I'm not sure if 4 holes will go through, but I love having supplies like this to work with. I just love it. It makes your projects so, you know, your designs just so much nicer when you have a little metal element and when you have things to choose from when you're creating your bead patterns. So this is a Amazon find, not very expensive. It's fashion findings, so I will put an anti-tarnish coating at the end of my work, but they just add so much. So let's see if we can get, I don't know if 4 will go through these, but I'm going to play. Let's see if they do. Oh yeah, 4 go through this beautifully. Okay, so I have that as an option and that one as well. So let me start with, let's see how they fit together. That's what I'm going to do. I am going to start with this gold bead, get all 4 of my strands in there, and then one of these really large hole spacers. And then my cylinder bead. And then I'm going to repeat that same thing on the top of the bead in reverse, the large hole, and then the little Tibetan spacer, little saucer bead. And you know, like I said, if you don't have Brazilian waxed cord, or you're not a fan of a knotted piece of jewelry, you can do exactly what I'm doing with the SoftFlex 49 strand that we made the pendant out of. You can tie knots in it if you wanted to, but you could, if you don't want to do knots at all, you can do another crimp tube here and then do exactly what I'm doing, and then another crimp, and then separate your strands. So in other words, wherever I'm placing a knot, you would be putting a crimp tube. But you can do the exact same design with a SoftFlex. It's so wonderful. I love, that's my favorite stringing wire. And same thing, I'm just reaching inside that loop, and I'm going to give this a pull. And that is gorgeous. And that just added to the drama of this pendant necklace. Oh my goodness, I already love it. I honestly could just stop there and tie this around my neck, but I'm not going to. So from here, I'm going to separate my 4 strands so that I have 2 on each side. My gosh, you guys will not believe, while I was recording, for no unknown reason, the power went out, all the lights on my work table went off, the internet cut out. It was very strange. So we checked with our electric company, and there was some sort of an outage affecting 192 customers, and I was one of them. So I'm back at it, my light is back on, and while I was waiting, I kind of started working on one side with my patterns. So one of the patterns in this, I'll just show you what I've been doing. I was stringing 5 of those O beads, one of my 6 O beads, and then another 5 of this little mix, which I just love because I see all those berry colors in this metallic mix, plus the gold and a little bit of a copper as well. So I just really love the way it looks, especially when they're all stacked together. It's really pretty. So I'm just at random picking up the different colors that are in that O bead mix, and when I get 5 on, so it just looks like that, 5 O beads, a 6 O, and then I'm just going to bring that down. Let me get untangled. Just going to bring that down to my work and tie an overhand knot like I have been, and put my knotting tweezer, get a hold of my last O bead inside the loop and give that a pull. So that makes my knot go exactly where the tip of the tweezers were and exactly where I wanted it. And then let me just show you the pattern. So there are 1, 2, 3 of those little sections that I just made separated by knots, and then I did another little Tibetan spacer, and then another 3 sections, and then I did kind of a bead pattern right here. With one of those 2 beads in the middle, and I just continued like that. That was reminiscent of the one that I started here, and I was not totally sure when the power went out, when everything turned off, if I was going to expose some of my waxed Brazilian cord, which you certainly can do. You can just let this show and then tie a knot and then proceed with beads. I have done that before, but I just love these O beads. I just love the look of them stacked together. They're just so pretty. It gives a texture that I just don't have words for, but it's so beautiful. So I started doing that and I really liked it. And this necklace is going to be 2-sided because it is exactly the same on this side as this side. I realized that when I was kind of rearranging my cord. And so your other option is to do another design on the other side of the necklace, you know, to do it asymmetrical, like create a whole different design. Maybe if I had more of these 6/0 gold seed beads, maybe I would do that. But for right now, I'm thinking I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm using a few of those Tibetan spacers. I'll have plenty of these check glass rondelles. So I am going to continue like that, knotting and stringing. I'll do it off camera. It's very repetitive, but it is just so relaxing and so much fun. I love to put on a movie or listen to something in Italian. My cord on this side is still quite long, and just like create those little bead patterns and make those bead stations in between the pattern that breaks up the bead stations. So like this is a bead station, this is a little bead station. I just love this type of a project. And as I said, I'll just remind you, I know there wasn't a disruption for you, but there was for me, because like I was literally in the middle of talking and filming and everything shut down unexpectedly. But if you don't care for this, you know, this makes the project take a little bit longer to string and knot in between all the sections. If you don't care for that and you just love a stringing project, here where I started with the waxed cord, you could totally do all these lovely patterns just on the 49 strand SoftFlex wire, and it would be a much quicker project, you know, if time is of the essence for you in getting something done. But I am loving this. So I'm gonna just do the same thing on this side to start off the second side that I did on the other side. And at this point, for those of you that have never worked with Brazilian waxed cord before, it has a thin coating of wax on it. It doesn't feel sticky at all, but as you can see, the ends are a little bit stiff, and you can like pinch and twist if it becomes a little tough to string with it. But you are totally free to put a little clear nail polish or a little gel super glue or something on the end to stiffen it if that makes you happy. I rarely take the time because, as you can see, I have no trouble stringing, and these are pretty small O beads, and the 6/0 beads, even my rondelle, as long as you've chosen beads that, you know, the hole actually will accommodate the 2 strands. I never feel the need to, you know, stiffen the ends. I rarely do. It depends on what I'm stringing, but you can totally do that if it's more of a, you know, more of a comfortable stringing process for you that way. But to me, the beauty of the wax cord is that I can just like pinch the ends and twist and keep going. So I am going to finish this exact thing that I'm doing to my desired length, just stringing and knotting. And when I get to about the length that I want, I have to make the decision if I'm going to use that magnetic clasp or just do a final little knot and do like a faux clasp and just pop this over my head. But that is exactly what I did on this side. and it is exactly the same thing. So I'm going to continue off camera just stringing and knotting. When I'm doing a project like this, I do it when I don't have a lot of things pending, a lot of other things calling my attention, because it's very relaxing. But it does take a little bit of time to knot in between, you know, all the strands like that. So I may take a little break and come back, but it'll just be a second for you, and I'll come back and show you how I'm going to finish this off, and one of my final steps that I always do for any of my projects. So just be a second for you. I used up an entire tube of O beads, but it was so worth it. As I continued stringing, I just was loving this so much. The look of these beads just strung together like that and just separated slightly with the 6/0 seed beads and the Brazilian wax cord knot. It's just beautiful. It's very fluid. It's not heavy. It has this amazing texture. And then, you know, I just dotted it with those Tibetan spacers. Both sides are identical. So it just kind of goes on like that with the little bead stations, the same ones that I did on this side. My knotting tweezer is grabbing my magnetic clasp. So as you can see, I did decide to add a clasp to this. And I am going to do, this side is all done and glued and everything, and I'll show you exactly how I do my knots on the end. So I'm going to start with a copper jump ring, because I had these nice sturdy ones in my stash, and I'm just alternating the gold and copper and the rich berries all the way to the end of the piece. And just for a little bit of leverage, I'm going to go ahead and attach it and close it really well to my clasp. And then I am just going to do what I've been doing, just an overhand knot. I'm just going to put that in. In fact, it will be easier if I take the other half away. I'm just going to do an overhand knot, and I try to make it land like over my last knot. So I'm going to reach inside that loop just as I have been doing, just to kind of direct it where I want it to go, and then just tighten it down. And then I like to, on the end of a piece like this, separate these two strands that I've been holding together all along, and kind of go around my piece and do a couple of overhand knots that way. Has an issue for me. Maybe nobody else would notice it, and it does hang nicely, but I'll show you what it is. And because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist about my work, and I have a pretty quick and easy remedy. So as soon as, while this is drying, I'll show you what that is, because maybe my solution might be useful for you. Oh, my dog is waking up and she sneezes in the morning. But maybe my solution will be helpful for you at some point in your own work if you run into something similar. So I decided, instead of just fixing it off camera, that I would share it with you, because maybe it will, you know, help you down the line. Something I figured out. So let's get the lid on this glue. Okay, so I'm just going to let that hang out before I trim it. And so what I'm not happy about, and honestly probably nobody else would notice this, because this hangs really, and I know that's a terrible camera angle for you, but when I hold my pendant part of my necklace up, it hangs perfectly straight. My drop hangs straight, but this loop has fallen to the left side of my crimp bead. And even if I had done a larger loop, it would still naturally fall to one side or the other. And that just bothers me, because, you know, I want it centered. So my solution for that, I am going to take a little piece of 20 gauge wire and my bail making pliers. And I need a blunt, nice clean blunt cut on the end. I'm just going to make a couple of small jump rings. I'll use this small mandrel, and just gonna put them in there and just roll it against my finger. I only need two, but I use the whole length of the wire. Okay, and then take my flush cutters and just cut one at a time up that coil using the flat side of the flush cutter if you've never made jump rings before. And this is that same 20 gauge wire that I used to do the loops on here, so I like that my wire matches. And what I'm going to do is take my pliers and open this loop and remove it from here. Just get in there, just remove it from there. And now I'm going to close it back, and I'm going to take another pair of pliers to change the orientation, because now since what I'm going to do here, I need both of my loops going horizontal to my beading mat. So I'm going to get a hold of it with one pair of pliers and get a hold of my loop at the bottom and just rotate those loops so that they are both horizontal to my mat. Looks like I got it. It's really just one turn. My bead is spinning, so it's giving me the illusion that I don't have them parallel to each other, but I do. And I'm just going to go back and tidy them up. Sometimes when you turn a loop in a direction, you just have to close it a little bit. And now I'm going to take two of the jump rings that I made and attach them on either side of this crimp bead and attach my loop. And just make sure it's closed really well. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just add it. It will move around because you can see it's going to move around, but it's going to, as I wear the piece, it's going to keep my flower and my copper drop centered. And I love the architecture of a double jump ring in a design, something I do pretty often. Just make sure it's closed really well. Okay, so now that hangs perfectly centered, and it always will, and it just makes me so much happier. A really simple fix, just took a couple seconds, and that just thrills me. So, you know, if you've been on my channel, I'm sure you've heard me say how powerful small seed beads, little seed beads are in design. As you can see, the 6-0s, these 11-0s, but jump rings are also really, really powerful in your designs. They give you movement. They can solve little issues of things being straight or hanging right. So that is just one of my little tricks. I hope maybe it helps some of you down the line if you ever have that issue. And this is my pattern. I just absolutely love the way that this turned out. I love that little magnetic clasp. And so this should be dry enough for me to come in as close as I can with my scissors and trim it away. This is at this point, if you decided that you wanted to add some little beads and leave these hanging on the back of the neck and tie a knot, you could, and I do that sometimes, but on this piece, I just decided to keep it clean on the back and, you know, not add anything to it. So this will be a really easy on and off. And there is one more thing that I will need to do to this piece. A lot of you already know what that is if you've watched me for any time at all, but these beautiful little Tibetan spacers will need an anti-tarnish coating because they will darken. They are lovely and wonderful. I love what they did in this design, but they are just fashion jewelry items. So I am going to take my Permalac coating, and I use the semi-gloss, and I'm just going to brush it over each one of these little spacer beads. I did have somebody ask me, do I do this before And the answer is no. I'm in the habit of doing it after. You could lay out your spacers and brush them like on a little tray or something, but I never know exactly what I'm going to be using when I start creating my patterns. And for me, I have a little bit of leverage when it's strung. I can, you know, use my beads that I don't need to coat like this to hold on to make sure that, you know, I've brushed it over everything. And so I will just do every single one of these just like that. It dries very quickly. And there is a matte, I was going to say there is a matte version of the Permalac, and like you may want that if you are working with some matte metallic beads or something like that. But one of my friends bought it and brushed it over something with crystals, that or something that was supposed to sparkle, and it did cloud them. But I have brushed the semi-gloss over pretty much everything, and I've never had that problem. So that's just a little heads up. I always link this in the description box of my videos, because if you sell your work, this is a great thing to type in the listing that all of the metals in your piece have an anti-tarnish coating. It's a great selling point. So I will finish brushing this on all of these little metal findings. I will take some really good pictures at the end and put them up, because it's another one of my long pieces that is difficult to see on the beading mat. And again, don't forget to check the description box, because mine are usually pretty large. I list my favorite tools and just anything that I think you might want for your work. I started working on them a little bit more because of the messages that I get, even private messages. So many people are new to jewelry making and are at the point of starting to collect the tools they want to work with and starting to look for things for their stash. And so because of all the messages I get, I decided to just put the links there, and they're there forever. So I thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all safe and well and having fun on your beading mats, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, creative friends.